get up and going. I want to thank you for joining us for Unified Networking Solutions webinar today. My name is Kevin White. I'm with Unified. And today we are talking about really two topics that deal with risk mitigation and recovery from risk. And they're both topics that are really top of mind for everyone today in the IT world. Our agenda is pretty ambitious. We're going to start with just a real quick look at who Unified is, just so you have an understanding of who we are, what world we are in, and what we provide for our clients. And then we're going to jump right into, like I said, two very important topics. We're going to start with the presenter from HP, who is going to be talking about printer security. And if you're not talking about this, you absolutely need to be. And so we're going to hit through the first 5 or 6 bullets on this list with HP taking us through that. We're then going to transition over to representative from Veeam, and they are going to walk us through the hows and whys of backing up data, so that should the worst case scenario happen, we get right back to operational very, very quickly. And then we're actually going to get into some Q&A. We'll probably do it at the end of each presentation. If you have questions that you're thinking about as we're going along, feel free to write it in the comments section that you were just typing in. That way it allows us to find all of the same questions and ask the most relevant ones, or the ones that are the most pressing for everyone. So to be very brief, very quick, Unified Networking Solutions, our goal really in the IT world is to provide for you infrastructure solutions for your team. We can either be a part of that team or we can be the entire team. Because we work for a myriad of different organizations, small to medium-sized businesses, we're in the education sector, we've been in the government sector, a lot of different markets, we really understand the depth and of what it is that organizations are looking for. Sometimes it is simple and small, and you just need a little bit of help, and sometimes it is literally design, secure, implement, and manage. And so for us, for the last almost decade now, we've really taken pride in the fact that our work really stands for itself. With as much growth as we've had in the last decade, we really think that it resonates with our clients how much we listen, and the fact that we give them multiple solutions to every problem really allows them to be empowered between their budget, their objectives, and coming to a final solution. We think that we do really great with our business growth, certainly in having other clients talk to each other, because there's, we can toot our horns as much as we'd like, but really it's all about what the customers think. So our biggest fanatics are our clients. We let them do all the talking for us, so feel free to jump on our website and check out what other clients have had to say about working with us. That's us in a nutshell. And now what I'd love to do is move over to one of our partners. So we are going to start with Ethan Olson. And Ethan is an HP print security technology consultant. And Ethan is going to, as we've stated, talk about probably one of the top issues that people have been facing, and that is the risk faced by everyone through their print system. So, Ethan, I'm going to shoot it over to you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Ethan Olson, been with HP for almost 12 years now in tech overall since the mid-90s. Hey, I'm from the Northeast, so I can speak fast and I can make up some time here. When we talk about print security, it's easiest to conceive of this in 3 ways, where we isolate the concept of security around the device from security around the document and security around the data. Obviously, in the real world, there are a lot of overlaps to these spheres, but just keep that in mind as we go through this. I will skip some stuff to make up time, but I do want to start with a quiz. This is a data breach quiz. Okay? You don't have to answer, just think about this. From Ponemon, what was the average time from breach to detection? They did a whole lot of research on this. Was it 16 days, 46 days, 96 days, or 146 days? The answer is disturbingly 146 days. This is average, not mean. Mean's a little bit less than that, but it's still absurdly long. Verizon study, what percent of companies found their own breaches? Less than 20%, 38%, 53%, or 62%. It was only 38%, which is why we get statements like this from a former FBI director. There are only two types of companies left in the United States, those that have been hacked and those that don't know that they've been hacked. Now, here's the part I'm going to skip over. It's a lot of dollars and spending statistics. They're out there, they're real, and we've got tons of this. And it's corroborated, so they're not lying statistics. But the reality is it's very expensive. But I really want to get into the guts of this, where we want to conceptualize what a printer is and then talk security about this. Okay, printers are a new attack landscape. Not too new, but it has exploded since 2015 out there, the number of incidents and how important this is. And here's why. It's because they look a whole lot like PCs. When you peel back the layer, the way we interact with them on the front is completely different than how we interact with the PC, but the way it operates in the back end, which is where the hackers like to be, which is where the ne'er-do-wells are, it's very, very similar. So they're being attacked just like PCs, and there's lots of news articles about it. Now, we're not going to talk about this specifically for the interest of time, but I do want to point a few things out. When it comes to threats, okay, and this is specific to printers, you'll notice that it's a little different than server systems. But there's external threats, and then what can this thing do if the thing gets compromised, the internal threats. All kinds of stuff, denial of service, data interception, which is a huge, huge one, code injection, etc. And then once it's compromised, it can become a distributed attack node. We've seen that several times. Ransomware can be involved. We've seen resource abuse. I worked with a university where they had some of their printers were mining cryptocurrency, and it totally trashed the printer so bad that people couldn't print to it because the processor was hung up. But this isn't too new here. Okay, China got pretty ticked off with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and a bunch of other groups that were like-minded because of their open disapproval of some privacy laws. So some hackers got into the system. They succeeded in getting personally identifiable information known as PII from people associated with the Chamber and 4 other groups. And based on the forensics from the situation, they were looking to get into over 30 groups. After the servers and desktops were cleaned, the network probing still picked up the malware in thermostats and printers. Okay, and this was all the way back in like 2011, I think. So let's talk about this pragmatically. Okay, a modern printer can be thought about very simply. We've got the operating layer, and then we've got the print rendering engine. If somebody compromises the print rendering engine, it just botches your print jobs or puts streaks on the page. It's not a big deal, and nobody's demonstrably shown a way to actually do that nefariously. So what we want to talk about is the section here in red, the networking and the interactive device functions. Now, all modern printers have a web server and use web technologies to get into them. Okay, so OWASP, which is the Open Web Application Security Project, maintains a top 10 list on these kinds of risks, security risks and vulnerabilities. And this is the list. It's big. And there's obviously more threats than this, but these are the top ones. I don't want you to memorize any of this except for 2 of them we're going to talk about, because based on how we have written our code and our firmware, these items with this blue lock icon are completely a non-issue for you. These are things where if you do it right, it is done, and it is fixed, and it's not a problem. Okay, so we have that handled just the way our firmware is written. These next 2 where you see these gray icons, we're actually in an active rollout section, or process I should say, where we are addressing this issue beyond where it is today. We're considered secure today, but we're not considered maximally secure, and none of our competition has gotten anywhere close to one-upping on us on this. If you have one of our brand new latest printers, you already have these more addressed than the older ones, which are in an active firmware update. So in the coming months, this is going to be a non-issue, and we're already 3/4 of the way there, but there are a few refinements and assurances that can be done, some cookie work that can be improved. So we're doing that. These last 2 are the ones I really want to focus on, because this is something we cannot solve for you. because of how it integrates with your network, how you use your printer. Sure, we could probably get about 90% there for you, but we cannot finish this for you. So we want to talk about these two. Let's first talk about security misconfiguration. How big is this issue? Okay, let's just go through some statistics. I hope the slide is rendering for you, okay? It's a boring slide. I highlighted a lot of stuff from 2014 because that was an epic hacking year. And then 2015 is where these techniques started being deployed against printers. Okay. The majority of manned attacks in the world today always have and always will, as far as we can foresee, make use of configuration errors. Okay. Biggest US banking breach of all time, exploit a misconfigured server. Should have had two-factor authentication like all the others. It presented two-factor authentication but allowed you in on one. There was one compromised credential, they got in. Okay. Target, everybody remembers the point-of-sale systems were infiltrated. It was through the HVAC system because of what's called default network trust. Okay, they had higher than minimum security levels associated with it, and they were able to do what's called a lateral movement in the network. It was a horrible situation. Home Depot's point-of-sale systems were also infiltrated. That's because they didn't update any of their security or configuration for years on the majority of their systems. Really bad. Now, something a lot of people didn't hear about because it didn't steal their personal information usually, there were 27,000 MongoDB instances, which are very popular out there on the web for cloud hosting. They were compromised and held for ransom because of poor security configurations. The last bullet point I do want to point out is a little specific. 42% of botnet attacks target a protocol that's called Telnet. It is a legacy trusted protocol, which is a fancy way of saying it's old and it's wide open clear text. Okay, it is available as a printer management protocol on a lot of printers. So that's something to kind of raise your eyebrows about. So let's talk about this specifically. HP has solved a lot of this, or helps you solve the security misconfiguration problem. We have best practices white papers. You can go out publicly to our support site and look at this. Hey, if you're in this situation, here are the steps to go through to make it secure, et cetera, et cetera. And it's actually people exploiting the fact that customers ignore these when you hear about stories of the hate mail flyers being printed off at universities and hotels, the weird ASCII text mechbot pictures being spit out of receipt printers, stuff like that, because people aren't following these guides. You ought to. They're free. Do it. The next thing is we have software that can actually manage a broad fleet. If you have more than just a few devices, it can get very cumbersome to ensure that you're abiding your stringent security policies. So we have Jet Advantage Security Manager. It is a fleet policy audit and a remediation tool. So not only does it help you pass a security audit, it will also fix the vast majority of the configurations that are out of spec on the HP printers in your fleet. Fantastically popular product and a very simple to use product too. Another thing that we have is our print security advisory services. We get nothing but raving reviews. Our guys are backed up way out, and we're hiring more people because this has grown dramatically popular. It helps people understand security as it relates to printing. And this is very critical because the vast majority of people tasked for print administration in any company have gotten little to no security training. Almost never is the print admin also a security guy. So we certainly have the professionals that can help fix that and put an action plan together and also even implement that as well, ourselves or through our partners. Now, when we think about what makes a modern printer, there are a lot of components, and every single one of these pieces is necessary and desirable. Maybe not mobile printing for some people, but just about everything on here is. And it can all be exploited or used against you. Even the input trays, if you're in medical. I was in a hospital recently and I saw a label on a printer that said Secure RX. It was in tray 2, well it's tray 3 technically, the additional paper tray that did not have a lock like they were supposed to. I actually know that that's a violation of policy. It was available to me. I could have gone in and pulled out prescription paper. It's one of the ways that theft and abuse occurs, and it puts them at risk because it's thousands of dollars of fines for taking a short stack. So we don't want to do without this, but we want to manage it properly. And it's very mind-boggling. I mean, if you look at the most capable printers out there, you can have 250 different security settings that are toggleable. Okay? I challenge anybody not looking at this screen to name 12. Now, fortunately, some of this cascades, so if you shut one off, it may solve 7 things downstream. So it can become very efficient very quickly. But to solve the problem, we have to take a categorical view of things. We've got to look at device security. We've got to look at access controls. What's the network security, data protection policies, document security, monitoring, management, and any additional services. We do this, and we answer every single vulnerability problem, address it, and make it a non-issue. Okay. Now, through Security Manager, it's very simple to use. The flow is intelligent, makes sense to people. As I had mentioned, it's because people who manage printers are not normally security experts, so it has to do a lot of the work for you. So very simply, add devices, create a policy, assess the devices, fix anything that's out of spec. We can even do custom certificate work for you, which is growing in popularity as well, and we've got great reporting. My favorite aspect about this is the way the tool is designed is it teaches you what the ramifications are of your decisions as you're going through the policy builder. So you learn security simply by using the product. And that's true, by the way. This has been out since 2012, constantly being refined and updated and modernized. And I was exposed to it in 2015 and became a security expert after that. Now let's talk about the other of those 2 top 10, sensitive data exposure. How big is this issue? Well, there's lots of news. We can read all about it, whether it relates to printing or not. The IRS exposed 10,000 Social Security numbers online. That's terrible. Microsoft Docs, people are sharing sensitive documents publicly, et cetera, et cetera. This gray one in the bottom left, many businesses are exposed to potential data breaches in their printer environment. And this is from 2013. And the articles have increased. Now we haven't vetted them as well because of just the proliferation of them. So you'll see some of this older data. We like that a little better because it's been a little more vetted and proven. But here's a perfect example. This is actually a screenshot from a multifunction printer, printer/copier. And the capability that was built in a long time ago for people to be able to print jobs, and you can do this to all major manufacturers. This isn't HP exclusive, but I chose to replicate what I saw at a customer on an HP device to demonstrate this. I am not logged in as the person who sent this job. Because of convenience, they chose to have it configured so that I could see previews and I could see anybody's queue. If I wanted to print it, then it would finally prompt. And if you look at the small text there, you can see in the preview that this is an employee termination letter. There's acquisition information, and then somebody's going to, I think it's a Jim Gaffigan concert at the end of the day. So D. Hillier is obviously having an epic day today. That is completely unacceptable. So this is a perfect example of doing it wrong. The way we want to do it right instead is with a tool called Access Control, where we have a secure pull printing private queue. Okay, this is where you log in with an RFID badge. We can also do NFC. You can pin in. So several ways to get in, and then it will be your private session. Nobody can see anybody else's queue, and then you can pull your jobs in properly. We also have job accounting, and it sees everything. I mean everything. Glass activity, all of the nitty-gritty details. You can use it for chargeback. It's great. We also offer through Access Control in-flight encryption as well as at-rest encryption, so end-to-end encryption of the data print stream. That is very difficult to achieve without a tool like this. Extraordinarily difficult on, say, a Microsoft print server because you don't actually have at-rest encryption there. Additionally, we have what's called IRM, Intelligent Rights Management. This is where you have privilege controls. So you can use it for convenience, like locking out color copies, or based on a person's role or the sensitivity of the information they deal with, prevent copying as a function altogether, and a bunch of other things, faxing, digital sending, et cetera, et cetera. So you've got granular control. And the last thing is we have print rules and data loss prevention. Okay. Now, I decided to change our boring flowchart with a more advanced one that I saw from SavageWorlds.com. I don't know, some game, some online thing. Some guy got really nerdy. I thought that was cool. So full disclosure, this is a little bit of my personality, my quirkiness in there. It is rules-based, it is flowchart-based, but this is way more impressive looking than ours. But an example would be this. For cost controls, you might want to say, hey, this print job's big. I mean, it's a 30-page print job, so it's automatically going to go to our low cost per click copier in monochrome. You can set it up so it's forced. You can set it up so a user has to override it, but they have that option. So it creates a psychological behavior where they want to save the company money. Or we have DLP, where it will actually pick up sensitive information and say, hey, you don't have the rights to print this, and print job fails. So we have all kinds of rules that can be put in there. Now, here's how it works simply. Okay, user's going to print a job. It's going to go out to the print server. It does not go out to the printers. It goes to the print server. You then authenticate. There we go. This is the right order. You then authenticate at the printer, and the print job comes in, and then you can see the pages showed up in the output bin. So we also believe in data sensitivity to the point where if something gets old, it expires, pay attention to what you see here on the server, the print job gets scrubbed. So we don't have the problem anymore of print jobs going unclaimed, sitting on the output bin, people grabbing jobs, pieces of paper that they shouldn't have, either on purpose or accidentally. It's usually accidentally, but you see stuff you shouldn't see. So that problem is completely solved, and there's less waste, less cost. Now the logging, the job accounting of access control is done both on the server and from the printers, and the data is correlated, so you see everything. Like I had mentioned, we capture glass activity, so that means scanning and copying as well. That's locked down unless a user logs in. Of course, you can customize that, whether that's the case or not, but then you can see, hey, this user did this kind of activity. And it's all in there. In fact, we even see the name of the document that was printed. We see the application it was printed from, et cetera, et cetera. And there's some really embarrassing stuff. It's really funny. So when you implement this, get used to, for the first little while, seeing your secretary printing out a nail and cosmetic guide, just 37 pages in color. I say that because we saw that on day one of putting this in once. It was hilarious. We've seen people printing out copies of like the Boy Scout manual. It's the craziest stuff. So there's a line between use and abuse, and you're going to see things. It's really cool. Okay, now let's talk about HP versus the competition. Where do we stand versus the others out there? In the competitive landscape, we actually have quite a bit more. Now, before I show you this next slide, I want to point out it's going to look strange to you. It's going to look like we have no advantage. Well, everybody has evolved through the necessities over the years, right? So what this generates is a pretty secure situation. I mean, they're about 2/3 there, but it creates a lot of hours of Me-Too discussion. So look for that and rebuff that. Don't let us or others waste your time. Now we start to pull ahead when you look at some more advanced device security features. We can talk about these specifically offline. I'm not going to go through these point by point. Okay? But when we then begin to look at our advanced solutions and services, we're pulling well ahead. And then when you look at our big 3 security features for our devices, we're clearly leading at this point. Big 3, I'm going to have to truncate this because of time. We have Secure Boot, which is an anti-rootkit BIOS defense. We're the only people with self-healing. This should be mandatory out there. I mean, if I were king for a day, I would regulate this. But we only have 3 competitors who've recently developed it, and nobody's self-healing. So if there's a problem, their devices go into sequester, ours reboot, and then you can still print. So the printer you bought to print still prints. We also have whitelisting. I don't know if the term whitelisting is the greatest for this, but marketing-wise we call it that. This is a way of preventing extensibility loads onto the system as well as firmware loads that are not actually signed by HP through certificate non-repudiation. So it's proven authentic code. We have runtime intrusion detection. Okay. If somebody somehow finds a way to circumvent whitelisting, we also have a way of ensuring that stuff doesn't run. There aren't memory modifications or code injection. It will clear out the memory, which requires a reboot. Right? It's an instant reboot, and there's a syslog message that goes out. So it is self-healing. Now, of course, if this is a persistent threat where it keeps hitting it, it's going to go into sequester, lock itself out of the network. That's obviously appropriate behavior because you have a persistent problem that you need to solve. We don't want our devices being party to your threats. So we do have some protections built in. This stuff works flawlessly. We do not have a single customer incident of it interfering with their normal printing. We have many use cases where it has actually solved problems for them, which is great. So near conclusion, not there yet, but getting close. Moving forward, we have done a lot for you. Our firmware alone and the way we've coded things in our devices has made a lot of progress in the last few years on these points. Now these are very nerdy but very real security issues. Every single one of these here has at some point in the past been exploited and used against customers. It'd be fun if we had more time, then I can tell you some of the customer situations, those where their stuff has been stolen so you don't hear about it in the news because they don't have to report because it's not client data, but it's dramatic and real. Now if you buy one of our latest printers or enterprise devices, we call the big three in terms of security, it prevents rootkits, code injection, backdoor app installation, file system mods, and service masquerading. And if you want to take it even further, through our solutions, Security Manager, Access Control, and a few others, you can also get all of this. The modern printers have 8 different ways to print to them. I mean, that's a lot, but it allows a diverse use scenario for any customer and a lot of flexibility there. The problem is most people don't know how to lock that down. Okay? But we can help. Your responsibility, you should follow the equal citizen model. The equal citizen model is this. On your network, you have network security for your whole network, especially your servers. You get secure Wi-Fi. It's not wide open. You have remote sites. That's critical for disaster recovery, and also you have secure VPN connections to them. You got mobile workers. You get device data protection, access controls, monitoring and management, et cetera, all in place. Why not for your printers? Why are they an exception in the majority, still the majority of customers' environments? It ought not to be. You ought to follow the equal citizen model. And that concludes my portion of this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ethan. That was fantastic. Again, I'm going to remind everybody, if you have questions, please do type them in the feedback section, and we can get them answered. I am always amazed, Ethan, at there's both the digital security of a print system, but also the literal physical plants. Some of the things that you had discussed or talked about in terms of just people literally being able to walk up to the machine, not getting hacked, but the security around the physical plants, so to speak, as well. It's always amazing to, the uses that we have for printing and what goes in them. It's a tough thing to lock down. One of the questions I would have is, what do you feel is a best practice for instilling in a company-wide manner, not just the IT team, but a company-wide manner, good security practices for printing? What are good methods or resources that a team could have to make that happen?
One thing that's very interesting that has nothing to do with sales, but is very, very effective, is if the tone at the top becomes security-minded, so that there's security conversation. Not kind of fake and we're being super serious and mean about this, and we've all gone through training, but it's just a common part of the discussion, practices, asking questions, etc. When people start to act that way, it infects everybody, and they all get responsible very quickly, and it solves a lot of problems. So it's a very interesting psychological thing, as Ton at the top. The second is to make a change. Make a change that users have to adapt to in using the printers, such as just turn on a login. They have to log in to get into certain functions. The most convenient way to do that is to use their door security badge, RFID badge. It's just it's very, very convenient that way. PIN's okay. Username and password's brutal. So if you make a change, suddenly everybody just feels different and interacts differently with the device, and they become more responsible, and they try to do less stuff they shouldn't do. Even if you don't have job accounting turned on and you're not watching the people, they're going to feel like there's visibility and exposure here. So there's some psychological games. Okay, that helps a ton because depending on the industry you're in, it could be your internal people that are the majority of the leakers and abusers, and a lot of that comes from the document as well. So those are the first things. Then after that, there's the whole scary, what's behind the layer? How do I shut off these ports and protocols? I don't even know what they are, etc. Yeah, get services consulting and use a tool like Security Manager and get that done. It actually happens very quickly. It's a much faster project than most people expect, but it is very real and doable. We have the tools for you. Yep.
Well, good. And a very interesting point about getting buy-in from the top. I think most IT departments wish they could really have the ear and the psychology of the people at the top for support in many ways, but definitely in support from security. So we will keep up the good fight on making sure everybody at the top really understands themselves and serves an example of
Great.
Secure computing and infrastructure. Well, thank you very much, Ethan, for that. And Ethan is going to remain on. If you do have questions, again, feel free to type them in the comments section. Right now, we're going to move over to Gordon Henwood, and he's the Sales Channel Manager and Partner Systems Engineer here in the U.S. Northeast, and he's with Veeam. So, Gordon, whenever you want, hey, let it rip. We're all ears.
All right, thank you. Welcome, everyone. Again, my name is Gordon Henwood. I am the Partner Systems Engineer here in the Northeast, here at Veeam. And today we're going to speak about mitigating our ransomware effects using Veeam in your infrastructure. So ransomware is definitely in the news, as you know, and ransomware is a malware that actually goes out and blocks access to your computer and or your data, and then demands money to be released back to you. Once it's in your environment, it actually spreads quickly from computer to computer. This is mainly done taking advantage of the fact that some of your computers are not up to date on your patching. And it's just not your OS patching itself, it's also your third-party application patching, such as your antiviruses and your web server and the plugins that go into the web server as well. You want to keep those up to date. So some of the research that's out there about ransomware states that at least or nearly 50% of every organization out there gets hit with ransomware or some type of ransomware. According to the FBI, they said that results in about 4,000 attacks a day across every environment. Now, what's so funny is that we all know about the phishing emails, not to click anything that's unfamiliar. We all have practices internally saying not to do this. But there's research out there that still finds that 78% of everyone out there in these organizations still click on that unknown piece of email, getting the malware into your environment. So the last one that was one of the biggest ones that was out there was the WannaCry attack, which affected over 400,000 machines, primarily taking advantage of the vulnerabilities in the Windows 7 OS. So if you are attacked by ransomware and you find a couple, how do you recover from it? So here at Veeam, we follow the 3-2-1 rule. So that's having 3 copies of your data, at least on at least 2 different medium, and at least one of those copies being off-site. With the additional off-site being offline will be your tape device. It could be going up to a managed service provider to have tape out as a service. So now that you have an air gap in between your data and your production network. So the 3-2-1 rule with Veeam, we have the capabilities of actually moving your data and placing it into your off-site repository, a cloud repository, and we can send it to tape directly. Today with Veeam, we introduce our capabilities of having this all done from a storage snapshot. So we're going down the stack. We're going to go right to your storage and call for a storage snapshot and use that as a source for a backup. So we're freeing up any resources on your hypervisor, your ESX or Hyper-V hypervisors for your production performance. And then we're still able to move that data to the three copies of your data to two different locations and having at least one of them being off-site as well. So we introduced our capabilities of having a storage snapshot because the storage snapshot, the volumes is quick, it's fast, and we can do it more frequently. It frees up resources above on the hypervisor. So what we could do is actually now, from the storage volume, tell it to take a storage snapshot that is still application aware. So we are still able to get a file level restore from an Exchange environment still, from that storage snapshot itself. So the other good way to mitigate some of the effects of ransomware is not having your backup data all in one particular storage or one particular repository. Diversify your repositories. So you can put it in a duplicated appliance for storage. You can move it into the cloud, or you can have it, a direct attached volumes on your Windows or your Linux systems as well. So having your data in 3 different places, meaning you will have at least one good copy of your data out there to be restored. Now that we have your backup, 3 copies of your data moved on 2 different mediums, how do you ensure that your backup is good or your replication would stand up as you need it to? So with Veeam, you can ensure your recoverability by using our on-demand sandbox technology. And what that is an isolated VLAN area where we will place your VMs from a backup file into read-only into that isolated lab. That lab can be used for testing patching, as we discussed earlier, any troubleshooting that you may have come across, all within an isolated lab. And then, if you like, we can actually commit those changes back into your production network as well. So how does Veeam verify your data? We do it in 3 ways. We use our virtual labs, which is the on-demand sandbox we spoke about a minute ago. And we use 2 different processes as well. To ensure your backups, we use our Sure Backup process, which will actually verify the backup file, as well as verify that we can actually bring up a VM from that backup file itself. And Veeam is also a replication tool. So we are able to verify that your replicated VMs are able to come up when you need it to by using our Sure Replica process as well. The Sure Backup and Sure Replica process has 3 components to it. The first one is the virtual lab. Again, that's the isolated networking area that the VMs will be started in. The application group. So the application itself on that VM, anything that's dependent, the application is dependent on to start it up, such as AD or Exchange. We put that in the application group to spin it up. And then we need a Sure Backup job. The Sure Backup job itself is the way we actually make this not a manual process, but an automated process. So we have a schedule behind this. So after each job, you can set a short backup job to start to verify that backup is the backup file itself is good, as well as the capabilities of extracting out the VMDK from that backup file will perform as needed. So the virtual lab, again, is isolated. There is IP master rating, so what we do is the VM itself that we're trying to put into that virtual lab, we can actually have it mimic the network that it is in production by using IP master rating. The static IP mapping is to give you the capabilities. If you have a VM that's going to be started in that isolated lab, but still has a requirement to be connected from or to your production network, we can actually place in a static IP route into there. The application group, again, is anything that comprises, any of the VMs that comprises your application. So if it's an internal application you've written that's depending on a domain controller as well as Exchange, we place the domain controller and Exchange VMs into the Exchange group. Now those VMs itself is coming from a backup file. Again, we're not touching your production VMs. This is all done from the backup file itself. And then we conduct the testing against the application group and the application with some application testing, some OS heartbeat testing as well. The sure backup process itself takes the file that's sitting in a compressed duplicated state in your storage, in your backup storage. We extract out the VMDK from the backup file itself, register it with your hypervisor, publish it into the isolated LAN area, and then conduct tests to verify that your backup can be used to restore your data. And then at the completion of the test, it will send out a report back to you of the success of the job itself. So this uses, as you see here, what it says vPower. And vPower is our technology, which is a Windows service that we're able to present the VMDK through an NFS mount, and we're able to publish it onto the hypervisor. This technology is what we use for our on-demand sandbox, as well as our sure backup processes as well. So another way to mitigate some of the effects of a ransomware attack is actually to monitor your environment. So part of our availability suite is our Veeam 1 product. A Veeam 1 product has capabilities of monitoring your production virtual infrastructure as well as your backup infrastructure. And it is also able to report on that infrastructure by giving you reports as verified VMs, unprotected VMs, your failover assessments, as well as from one particular click, you can actually have a visual diagram of your environment in one spot. The monitoring portion, we have a built-in alarm that can detect ransomware activity. The report itself, the alarm itself is called the possible ransomware activity, and it's based on high CPU runtimes and disk writes, but this is customizable for you. So you can make this more granular to your environment. So once you get the alarm that your VM is unusually busy, you go into that VM, determine that it's a ransomware attack, then you shut that VM, and then you activate your disaster recovery process. Now, given that you follow the 3-2-1 rule, you're able to retrieve your data, a good copy of your data, from at least one of those locations itself. So we spoke about the importance of having your OS patch up to date. This is very important. It's not just your OS, it is your third-party products as well. And with the capabilities with Veeam, we can actually test some of those patching in our on-demand sandbox area, all from a backup file. Following the 3-2-1 rule, we ensure that you have a good copy of your data. So in the event of a disaster, not just in a ransomware attack, any disaster, you're able to get back your data as needed. And then we ensure that our backup, and again, our replication part of our tool, is going to work as needed. And using the on-demand sandbox technology, we're able to spin up the VMs and run the sure backup or sure replica process to verify that your data will come back to you in a timely manner. And then the last portion, again, is to monitor your environment. Make sure that you're able to recognize unusual write activity, which is usually the first sign of a ransomware attack itself. So following these rules that we discussed today should help you mitigate some of the effects of ransomware using Veeam software. So I know I went through that. We had some time. Now it's 1 p.m. I want to give it back to you.
All right. Well, Gordon, thank you so much. My first impression of, or the first question that pops in my head when we talk about things like the ransomware attacks are, the organizations that are paying the ransom. So you get like hospitals and things like that obviously are data-driven and critical in terms of time. Are these organizations simply not doing enough to back up, or is it a matter of the amount of time it would take to recover that data and put it back online? Why are maybe you don't know, but it's just the first question that enters my head is, all these people are paying. A hospital, maybe they don't do backups. I don't know. I don't know how uncommon,
Right. So
in your perspective, how uncommon is it that an organization wouldn't be backing up?
Well, everybody backs up. Everyone backs up the data. The issue that a lot of people have, a lot of customers I've come across, is that they don't test their backup or their disaster recovery plan often enough, mainly because of resources. So if they come faced with an attack, a ransomware attack, is usually because it's connected. They have their backup information connected into the production network, and they weren't monitoring their activity as needed. So now the ransomware malware is able to spread rapidly through their environment. And then once they realize that since they never really tested their recoverability to give them the insurance that they can get the data back, that's where a lot of them fall short. And that's why they pay, because they don't have that sense of insurability of that, oh yeah, you know what, I'm attacked, I can get that data back, I don't have to pay anything. So to avoid that, that's why they end up paying. So what we're trying to do at Veeam, we're always on data availability, and if we architect your environment out correctly, following the 3-2-1 rule, you'll at least have a copy of your data that's not susceptible to the attack, and you'll be able to retrieve it back into your production network.
Perfect. Got it. Looking for, at this point, if we've got any other questions from the audience that's out there, again, you can feel free to type it in the Q&A section of the participant feedback within your conference frame there. So feel free. Just a few closing remarks also that we want to make. First of all, I wanted to thank HP and Veeam, both Ethan and Gordon, for taking the time today to give us some great insight into this notion of we all know risk. As was stated earlier, you've either been hacked or you don't know you've been hacked. We're all going to catch it at some point. What are we doing to prepare? And these are some great actionable steps and resources to move forward with. So I wanted to thank both of them for doing that. Second thing is I wanted to thank all of you for being on here and being a part of the conversation. Education is the first step in getting to a solution, and then the next step, obviously, is enacting the ideas, the thoughts, the concepts that you've got. And Unified obviously partners with great providers out there like HP and Veeam. We want to be able to provide solutions to all of you. one of the things we would love to do is to be able to bring resources to you like this webinar. So we ask one big favor. We have no problem doing all the work to bring some of this data, this information, things like blogs and what have you to you. We just want to know what is effective and what is not, what works for you, what is not. We want to customize the resources we provide to you. So when you see a survey come on this webinar, please, we ask, just respond to it. Give us all the feedback you can so that we can provide great resources to you. The second thing we want you to know is this recording, a recording of this webinar, and as well as a print security blog are going to be sent to you. So you're going to get that as a follow-up and as a thank you to this. And if we have no other questions, then at this point, we're just going to say, everyone, enjoy. Hey, keep your computer system safe out there. And feel free to give Unified a call if you just want to talk through some of the issues, questions, or comments about this webinar or anything else. We appreciate it. Have a great afternoon, and we'll see you at the next webinar. Thanks, everyone.